Welcome back, everybody, to Active Life Insights. Today, we're talking about an exciting topic, which is downtown walkability living in West Palm Beach. Walkability today is much different than just convenience. It's really about accessibility to lifestyle. And, traditionally, we didn't really think about much more than restaurants and, bars and work, when we think about a city, But today, with these lifestyle forward developments, there's much more activities to do, around health, around sports, even pick up, like I was the other day we were downtown, Danny. I saw a pickleball new development and looked like a mid-rise. It was pretty wild.
Yep.
So, why does this matter? What's happening kind of here in Palm Beach? And, as somebody that grew up my life here, so much of Palm Beach was so consolidated down to a very small area, and there was so much, kind of wasted space or unused space or even some unsafe space at one point in time. And really, with different developers, like the related Ross Group, and to see what Steve Ross is doing and how he's working with the town and the county, and really about what the vision is and the investments that are happening. Let me unpack it a little bit. I think it's pretty wild because it's really like looking at a new city, being built from the ground up. Even though Palm Beach has been around for a long time, because of the fact that there was such underutilized real estate. When you look at really the master plan of where the town is going, they've really kind of thought through the key ingredients as it relates to having a successful city and a place that you really want to live, and when you think about some of those elements, it's just not about great restaurants and great activities to do, but it's also about, jobs and opportunity, which was not something really that when I grew up in South Florida, most of us left if we wanted to get, really good high paying jobs. And what's different today is that, and you'll talk a little bit about kind of the crazy migration we've seen with businesses, is there is a tremendous amount of companies that are coming to West Palm Beach. And as a result, bringing really good high paying jobs. And so, similar to other cities, it's great to be able to work and live, near where you work and have all those activities you want and that kind of live work scenario. So, Palm Beach is really kind of moving in that direction. And when you see some of the new projects that are happening and some, both from a office space perspective, mixed use perspective, and then, all the different opportunities, whether it be residential home, condo, townhouse to live, in, a variety of price points, it's really a great place to be investing right now, a great place to be moving to right now. And a tremendous opportunity as it relates to high-paying jobs and a really great quality of life. So, let's just kind of jump right into that. So, Danny, let's talk a little bit about why is, West Palm Beach getting so much attention?
Yeah, so just to set the stage, the term Wall Street South has been coined for West Palm Beach. And that's because I'm just going to read off some stats here based on the full 12 months of 2025. So Florida received 39 billion in new wealth migration, and Palm Beach County was the #1 receiver of that for all counties in Florida. And that includes the county is home to 68 billionaires now and 71,000 millionaires. And more than 140 companies have relocated over the past 5 years. And those numbers are just staggering. They're unbelievable.
Yeah, they are.
Like you don't see that anywhere north of Miami. So just, as a lifelong resident Floridian, like, what do you think of that? Like, is that much wealth a good thing to you? Is there almost like a cap, or how do you see the future of West Palm going?
A couple things, from a real estate perspective, and I talked to real estate investor clients about this, and again, from growing up here most of my life, it's an exciting thing that we have companies moving here now because that opens up a whole part of the market that we didn't have before from people that are looking for, permanent homes. And so that's really improved, if you're looking to sell or looking to invest, a whole new part of the market that we didn't have before, from The other, I think, thing that is great, as a local is, what does this mean to all the local businesses? So when you think about restaurants, you think about retail shops, because of all these people that are now moving here for jobs, living here full time. It's wild. I was just saying last week, actually, we were out to dinner as a family, and I was like, it's supposed to be dead this time of year, and
Yep.
we had to wait 30 minutes to get in a table at Food Shack. So it's pretty wild to see. So I think it's a great thing, because Florida has had very pocket economies, and now you're seeing it spread throughout the state. Where my concern is, particular being a land conservation guy, is that that development is done smart, and that we don't just gobble up land in the state. But a lot of what's going in downtown Palm Beach, I think, is very smart, because we're repurposing a lot of real estate that was underutilized, or just kind of idle. And so I think it's a great thing, because obviously it brings the money that's needed to do the development that's needed. But when you look at some of the investments that are happening in things like rail, with the train system, when you look at kind of downtown, the walking paths, and the co-investment that some of these developers are doing with the city, it's really a smart, and an amazing future of where things are going. I think the thing that all of us are concerned a little bit about is, but again, I see the underpinnings of they're doing the right things, is affordability. That it doesn't just become another city. I mean, you look at what's going on in Miami. It's becoming unaffordable for so many people. And I was born and raised in Miami, and a lot of the old families that I know and I grew up with have moved out of there, not just for the money, but also the congestion and so on. I think we have an opportunity to be much different up here in Palm Beach. And I think what I'm seeing with, the direction of where things are going, that I think, it's intentional, that they're making and providing real estate opportunities for all incomes, which makes for a very healthy city.
Definitely. So to bring it back to the topic of the day, downtown walkable, why is walkability becoming so valuable? That everyone that's coming into Florida, it's usually from New York, Chicago, Boston, California type areas, and they want to live in these downtown pockets, like you're mentioning, and not as much the suburban lifestyle anymore. They want to be able to walk, grab dinner, grab coffee without having to hop in the car, and it makes life just more simple. So I'll break it down real estate wise. So walkability score is a term in real estate that we use to rate different cities and locations or neighborhoods or housing based on a scoring scale. So it brings into pretty much everything you do throughout the day, not having to get into a car. Is that doable at this location? And West Palm Beach has the highest score of 83 in Palm Beach County compared to all the other cities, Jupiter and Delray Beach, everything has the highest rating. And that's because you look at areas like City Place. It has multiple downtowns: City Place, Clematis Street, the Flagler waterfront. There's constant concerts going on down there. There's an Equinox. You have a fitness element. And then the Bright Line is a huge factor because you're now connected to all the other major cities in South Florida, like Orlando. Tampa's going to be one of the next one. You can get down to Miami for a weekend, just like how New York is connected with the Amtrak to Philly, and therefore, so what points would you say on this walkability, this shift that we're seeing, people want to live in these types of real estate?
I mean, I think one of the biggest points, and I just hear this from people, is the connectability. I know so many friends that jump on the Bright Line and go down for a Heat game, or Art Fest or whatever it may be. I know a ton of people that do business. I met a guy actually on Bright Line that was from Fort Lauderdale, and he said the Bright Line opened up a whole new market for him. So he actually opened up an office in Orlando, has no car, just commutes, once a week to check in with his, branch manager, and
Yep.
in Orlando. So I mean, it's opening up so many. The connectability is opening up so much opportunity for quality of life, and lifestyle opportunities, but also business. And Palm Beach is really kind of at the hub of that, both logistically where we're at in the state, and also, with the investments that are happening here from these major companies. And obviously put on top of that, it's a great place to live. We've got great food scenes. We've got great water accessibility, and we've got great activities, that the city offers.
Yep. So we're talking about all this influx of wealth coming into these cities, and where is that money going to support this new lifestyle that's being built? And the main project in downtown West Palm specifically is the Nora district. It's over $1 billion multi-use neighborhood with, commercial, residential, retail, everything you can imagine. And we actually were just down there yesterday, and it's crazy just to see, you know, the lifestyle there, the construction elements, the buildings. Um, how do you feel about these large scale projects that are now just becoming regular in our neighborhoods here that we've never seen before?
I think we were talking about this yesterday. The speed by which they're bringing these projects online is insane. Within like this Nora project, I think was less than 2 years, and so I mean, I literally was downtown last year, didn't even know where that was. Even when we were down there yesterday, I was kind of like, where are we? Because it's just such an amazing little hub. And I think a couple things. One is, the city is and the county is working well together with the private investor side. And that's so important when you look at how cities grow and smart growth. Two, I think what I like about the Nora district is it had a lot of charm, it had a lot of character. So they didn't, overbuild from a standpoint of, how many stories. The type of building that they did it feels like it's been there forever. And, great mixed use, which in, particular in South Florida, where we have such little space, when you're near the coast, smart building is everything. And mixed use is so important as it relates to, simple things like parking is a huge issue for us. So, I was really impressed with Nora district as it relates to the nice balance of retail, restaurants, office space. I'd love to have an office down there. And now with the boutique hotel, and then from the walkability perspective, you're right there, 2 blocks or 3 blocks in the water, and in downtown and like Clamato Street and or City Center, all walkable. So I think it's awesome what they're doing, and I'm super impressed with the smart build that's going on and strategic locations that they're choosing. That, like, for instance, Nora District was kind of a abandoned train station or depot, I think, and so highly underutilized and made it very public focused, where people from all incomes can come and enjoy it, and there are amenities that everybody can enjoy.
Definitely. So, Nora is just one piece of a much larger transformation, for downtown West Palm Beach. And, in collaboration with Related Ross and the city, they have a long-term plan, especially for the Flagler waterfront, which is, still like 10, 15 years down the line. That's a major transformation that isn't official yet, but things that are actually happening right now are directly in City Place. There's two very large commercial buildings already going up. They're already up to 4 or 5 floors at 10 City Place and 15 City Place, and it's nearly 1 million square feet of new class AA office. And there's ServiceNow is an AI tech company actually that's coming into the building, and they've already leased over half of that building. It's becoming their South Florida, it's becoming their whole corporate hub, which this influx, that type of company, and to actually make this their home base just shows you how much this wealth and how much these companies believe in downtown City Place. And beyond that, the city approved and is going to build a Vanderbilt graduate school to be a feeder system to these high-paying tech and finance jobs that are growing in downtown West Palm Beach. And just that type of synchronicity with a city and to build an economy is just so impressive, and to see it unfold over these last couple of years and actually come to fruition.
Yeah, and also from a healthcare perspective, Cleveland Clinic is making tremendous investments with in downtown, and not quite as big a campus as they have in Weston or West Fort Lauderdale, which is amazing. I've been out there, but new hospital, new post care, and we really we need that downtown. Obviously to be able to support the growth, but also the innovation of really innovative and great care, in healthcare, in a city, like Palm Beach.
Exactly. So what does this mean for real estate? We're talking about a lot of investment and commercial side, but what does this mean if I want to move to West Palm Beach? What does the residential market look like? We're talking about all this high influx of wealth coming in. It's like, am I priced out now? Not necessarily. There's obviously the new development, Forte Lux and Bristol. They start in the $7 million range and they go up to 20, 25 million, 50 million. South Flagler house that's going to open in 2 years here. The penthouse is 70 million. That's obviously the extreme end of the wealth side. But, there's places like in City Place and around that you can still lease, if you're a young professional, you can still lease in the 2000 range. If you have a job in this downtown area, you can afford that rent, throughout your career. And then there are the existing buildings of One Watermark Place or Waterview Tower or the Trianon, where you can get in still at that 1 million number, just under the two. Um, and the median price being around $761,000. So it's still transitioning and there's still, you got to be able to find your pockets, but it's still a livable city as you grow professionally as well.
You know, I think the other neat thing is, some of the historical character, whether you look at homes, near the north side that we're talking about, or even on the south side of the city. Um, there's so many different areas. And I think the thing that's most incredible about really our timing right now and what's happening in South Florida, in particular Palm Beach County and downtown is, when you look at it statistically, and my numbers might be a little off, but realistically, when you look at new construction compared to the rest of the market, it's probably 10% or less than 10%. So when you think about downtown and you think about these projects or even some of these high rises that are going up, we're just at the very beginning of this, and things are only going to get better, and you're seeing revitalization of areas that before were very depressed and but not losing that character. They still have their charm, of the different, what those neighborhoods, when they're bringing a lot of these neighborhoods back and they're really doing development in a smart way, and to your point, there is still affordability. And I think they're trying to, keep a balance of that, as we look at how not only downtown, but the surround areas, ultimately expand, so, really, when you look at it, who should consider downtown? Well, anybody that wants to be in a city and but also likes to be near the water and kind of the action. And traditionally we think of young people and professionals, but it's gone beyond that. Yes, our corporate executives. There's kind of five groups we're seeing. Corporate executives being a growing area because of the fact of all these companies moving, and they want to be near the financial district downtown. But there's such accessibility around Palm Beach and downtown. If you want a house or you want a beach condo, or because you can get downtown within 15 minutes or 30 minutes if you're up in Jupiter, which is pretty unique. We're seeing a big growth of entrepreneurs downtown because of the collaboration, because of the networking, and because of some of these new hubs that are popping up, like the financial district and the tech district. Positions we've always had. I think the big change right now is the fact that there's so many more opportunities with some of the new construction, and there was limited family opportunities. So a lot of physicians with their families lived, up north in Palm Beach Gardens or Jupiter. And now are looking at downtown options that we didn't have before. We're also seeing empty nesters that like that city life, which we really didn't have before because there's very limited inventory on being able to live in a nice condo or a house and be downtown. And obviously your second home, we've always had second home ownership in Palm Beach County. That's growing because of the new projects that are happening. These are very lifestyle forward developments. They're not just condos, but they're condos with, all amenities from pools to workout to, spas to marinas. It's an incredible lifestyle that, we're able to create here in West Palm Beach, and opportunities, for buyers, in the real estate market.
Yeah, we always tell our clients, that lifestyle should drive the real estate decision. And the downtown West Palm Beach is showing its lifestyle. It's investing in all these fine dinings. There's the Equinox coming into play. And, if you want to open your door and you're instantly able to just walk, get coffee, walk to work, sit down with your friends by the water, have a drink, hop on the Bright Line, go to Fort Lauderdale for the weekend, Miami, whatever it may be. Downtown West Palm Beach deserves a serious look, and young professionals are moving here like we've never seen before, and it's great for the local area.
So downtown living walkability, we talked about today. Today we focused on really downtown and kind of West Palm, but there's so many different opportunities for living in these cute little towns that we have in Palm Beach County. And so we'll kind of move up the coast, and we'll hit some of the other areas, and whether it be North Palm or Juneau or Jupiter, because walkability and living near town doesn't have to be high rises and corporate buildings. It can also be your local little town. That there's so many great towns here in the Palm Beach County area. So, Danny, appreciate the input today, and I look forward to our next topic on downtown and walkability.
All right. Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for watching.